My wife didn't cry when she told me she had cheated. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the words, not the silence after them, not even the way my chest tightened as if someone had placed a stone inside it. I noticed her face. Rachel was standing near the dining table, one hand resting on the back of a chair, the other holding her phone like it was nothing, like it had not become the center of our marriage for the past 6 months. Her eyes were dry. Her voice was steady. Her chin was lifted just enough to look brave but not enough to look cruel. She had prepared herself for this moment. I could see it in the way she breathed, in the way she waited after saying it, in the way her fingers tightened around the phone. She expected something from me. A shout. A curse. A broken plate. Maybe my hands shaking. Maybe me stepping toward her with rage in my eyes. Maybe she expected me to ask who he was, how long it had been going on, where they had met, whether she loved him. She expected a man being destroyed in front of her. But I didn't give her that. I sat there with my hands folded in front of me, looked at the woman I had loved for 14 years and said, I know. Her face changed so quickly that if I had blinked I might have missed it. The confidence dropped first. Then the color. Then the little performance in her eyes disappeared, and for the first time in months, Rachel looked at me without control. What do you mean you know? She asked. I looked at her phone. Then I looked back at her. I know about Ethan. I know about the hotel. I know about the messages. I know about the money. And I know you're recording this conversation. She didn't move. She didn't even breathe for a second. The room became so quiet that I could hear rain tapping against the kitchen window. That was the moment Rachel understood that the confession was not the trap anymore. Was the proof. My name is Daniel Carter, and before everything happened, I would have described my life as ordinary in the best possible way. I had a steady job, a mortgage, a wife, a house with warm lights in the evening, neighbors who waved from their driveways, and a routine I trusted more than excitement. I was never a man who chased chaos. I never believed love had to feel like a storm to be real. I believed love was the person who knew how you took your coffee. Love was paying the bill before the due date. Love was fixing the loose cabinet door because your wife mentioned it once while making dinner. Love was remembering that she hated driving in heavy rain and offering to pick her up without making it sound like a favor. For years I thought Rachel believed the same thing. Maybe she did once. Or maybe I only saw what I wanted to see because love has a way of painting people in kinder colors than they deserve. We met at a friend's birthday dinner when I was 28 and she was 26. I was sitting near the end of the table, wearing a shirt I had ironed badly and trying not to look uncomfortable around people who seemed louder and more confident than I was. Rachel arrived late. I remember that clearly. Everyone turned when she entered, not because she demanded attention, but because attention moved toward her naturally. She had dark blonde hair, green eyes, and the kind of smile that made people feel invited into her world. She sat across from me, apologized for being late, and somehow made the apology sound charming instead of careless. For most of the evening, I barely spoke to her. I didn't think she would be interested in me. Men like me don't usually imagine women like Rachel choosing them. But near the end of the night, she asked what I did for work. I told her I worked in logistics operations. She asked what that meant. I explained badly. She laughed softly and said, "So you're the person who makes sure things don't fall apart." I smiled and said, "I try." She looked at me for a moment longer than necessary and said, "That's rare." That was the first hook she placed in my heart, though I didn't know it then. Our first years together were simple. Not easy but simple. We lived in a small apartment above a bakery, and every morning the hallway smelled like bread. Our furniture didn't match. The heating failed twice in one winter. We ate cheap pasta, watched old movies, and talked about the future as if it were a place we were already walking toward. Rachel used to say she liked that I made her feel safe. She had dated men before me who were exciting in the way fireworks are exciting. Bright, loud, beautiful for a moment, and then gone, leaving smoke behind. She said I was different. I was proud of that. I built my whole marriage around being different. If I promised something, I did it. If Rachel needed me, I came. If life became heavy, I carried more. When her father died, I handled the calls, the paperwork, the funeral arrangements, and the relatives who suddenly had opinions about everything. Rachel spent 3 days barely speaking, sitting on the edge of our bed in one of my old t-shirts, and I sat beside her every night without asking her to be strong. When she finally broke down, I held her until morning. Years later, during one of our worst arguments, she told me I had never understood real emotion. I almost reminded her of that night. I almost told her that I had once held her grief with both hands while she had no strength to carry it herself. But I didn't. By then I had learned that reminding someone of your love doesn't matter when they have decided to rewrite you. Rachel started her interior design business after 5 years of marriage. She had always had talent. Even in our cheap apartment, she could make a room look warm and intentional with almost no money. She understood color, light, texture, small details that changed the feeling of a space. At first, she designed rooms for friends. Then friends recommended her to friends. Then someone wealthy hired her for a lake house, and everything changed. I remember how excited she was when she got that call. She ran into the living room barefoot, waving her phone, laughing like a girl. I picked her up and spun her around. She said, "If this works, Daniel, everything changes." I said, "Then we'll make it work." And we did. I built her website. I took photos of finished rooms. I drove across town to pick up fabric samples. I used my savings to help her rent a small office. When she cried because a client hated a design she had spent 3 weeks on, I stayed up with her and helped organize a new presentation. When she landed bigger clients, I celebrated her. When she got busier, I adjusted. When she needed me less, I told myself that was success. The first signs were not dramatic. That is what people who have never lived through betrayal don't understand. They imagine discovery as a sudden explosion, but most of the time it begins as a slow leak. A laugh she doesn't share with you anymore. A phone screen turned down. A new password. A sudden interest in clothes that are never worn for you. A story with too many details in one place and not enough in another. A kiss that lands on your cheek instead of your mouth. A body beside you in bed that feels miles away. Rachel didn't become a stranger overnight. She became 1 inch by inch while still sleeping in our home, using our towels, asking me to buy almond milk and calling me honey in front of other people. She started saying I was too predictable. At first she said it playfully. "You're such a routine man, Daniel." Then she said it with irritation. "Do we have to do everything the same way?" Then it became a weapon. "This is why I feel trapped. Everything with you is planned, controlled, safe." The word safe changed meaning in her mouth. Once it had been a compliment. Then it became an insult. I tried to change. I suggested restaurants. I booked a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. I bought tickets to a jazz show even though I didn't care for jazz. Rachel smiled politely at my efforts, the way someone thanks a child for a drawing they don't want to keep. "You're trying," she said once, as if trying itself embarrassed her. I remember feeling ashamed and angry at the same time, then ashamed for being angry. That was the pattern. She would wound me, I would bleed quietly, then I would apologize for staining the floor. Ethan Cole entered our marriage before I ever saw his face. He was a client at first, at least that was the title Rachel gave him. Wealthy. Divorced, she said at first, then later separated, then later she stopped mentioning his personal life entirely. He owned several rental properties and was renovating a luxury home near the lake. Rachel said he had taste. Rachel said he understood beauty. Rachel said he respected her eye. Rachel said his project could introduce her to people who would change her business forever. I noticed how often she said his name. "Ethan thinks this. Ethan wants that." Ethan said most designers don't understand restraint. Ethan knows someone from a magazine. Ethan invited a small group to dinner after the showroom event. A name can become a shadow in your house. Ethan's name was everywhere before he ever stood in front of me. The first time I asked about him, we were brushing our teeth. Rachel was leaning toward the mirror, applying cream to her face, and I said, "Is Ethan married?" She paused. "Just 1 second, but I saw it." "Why?" she asked. "Because you mention him a lot." She laughed, but her eyes stayed on her reflection. "He's a client." That wasn't my question. She put the cream down. "You're being weird." I rinsed my mouth and said, "I'm asking a simple question." She turned to me then, annoyed. "Do you hear yourself? This is exactly the kind of energy I cannot deal with. Suspicion. Control. Insecurity. It's exhausting." I stared at her, still holding my toothbrush, feeling suddenly foolish. "I'm not trying to control you." "Then don't." She walked out of the bathroom. I stood there under the bright light, looking at myself in the mirror, wondering when asking a question had become a character flaw. After that, Rachel stayed late more often. She had client meetings, design presentations, networking dinners, drinks with contractors, vendor events, consultations that ran long. Her calendar became crowded with things I could not verify without becoming the man she accused me of being. One night she came home after midnight wearing a black dress I had never seen before. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold. She looked surprised to see me awake. "You didn't have to wait up," she said. I was worried. "That's just waiting up with a better excuse." She took off her earrings and placed them on the counter. I noticed her hands. Her nails had been done. Red. She never wore red nails for work. "How was the event?" I asked. Long, who was there? She sighed. People. Was Ethan there? She froze just slightly. Yes. Along with many other people. You smell like cologne. Her eyes sharpened. Excuse me? Not yours. Men's cologne. A man hugged me goodbye, Daniel. Adults do that. Which man? She laughed bitterly. Do you want me to make a list of everyone who touched my shoulder tonight? I didn't answer. She stepped closer, her voice lower now. You know what your problem is? You think because you don't cheat, you're automatically a good husband. That sentence stunned me. I had not accused her of cheating. Not directly. But she had brought the word into the room herself. I wish I could say I confronted her boldly after that. I didn't. I became quieter. I watched more, spoke less, and hated myself for both. Suspicion changes your body. You begin listening for keys in the door. You check the time without wanting to. You notice when she takes a shower immediately after coming home. You notice when she turns away to answer a text. You notice the little smile she tries to hide. You notice that she buys lingerie and you never see it. You notice that she starts going to the gym, not with the tired discipline of a person trying to be healthy, but with the charged excitement of someone preparing to be seen. I noticed all of it, and still I told myself there might be another explanation. Marriage teaches you to give the person you love the benefit of the doubt. Betrayal teaches you that some people live comfortably inside that benefit. The proof came on a Saturday morning. Rachel had left for what she called a design brunch. I was cleaning the kitchen because cleaning gave my hands something to do. Her old laptop sat open on the dining table. She used it sometimes when her newer one was connected to design software at the office. I walked past it once and saw a notification appear in the corner. Ethan Cole. The message preview said, "Last night was worth every risk." My body went cold. I stood there with a dish towel in my hand, staring until the notification disappeared. I should have walked away. I know that is what a better version of me might claim. But the better version of me had been starving on lies for months. I touched the trackpad. The screen woke up. The messaging app was open. I saw his name. I saw the conversation. I saw my marriage lying there in black letters on a white screen. At first, I read like a man falling. There were messages about missing each other, about stolen hours, about how hard it was to go back to normal life after being together. Rachel wrote that she hated coming home and pretending. Ethan wrote that she deserved passion. Rachel wrote that I was a good man but not enough. I remember that phrase most clearly. Not enough. It was strange how calmly my mind repeated it. Good but not enough. Loyal but not enough. Safe but not enough. 14 years but not enough. Then I scrolled further and found something worse than desire. I found planning. Rachel had told Ethan she wanted out but didn't want to lose everything. Ethan told her she needed leverage. She said I was calm most of the time but had a quiet anger under the surface. Ethan asked if she could get me to show it. Rachel wrote, "If I confess the right way, he'll break. He won't hit me but he might yell or grab my arm. Even that could help." I read that message 3 times. The affair hurt. The plan froze something inside me. My wife was not just betraying me. She was preparing to turn my reaction into her advantage. She knew I had never laid a hand on her. She knew I had walked away from arguments just to avoid saying something cruel. She knew my greatest weakness was that I still loved her. And she wanted to use that love to make me look dangerous. I took photos of the messages with my phone. My hands were steadier than I expected. I saved them in a folder. I sent copies to a new email account. I closed the laptop exactly as I had found it. Then I walked outside and sat in my car for nearly an hour. It was cold, but I didn't turn on the engine. I stared at the garage door and felt my life rearranging itself. A part of me wanted to run back inside, call Rachel, scream at her, demand to know how she could do this. Another part of me understood with frightening clarity that this was exactly what she wanted. Not necessarily that day, not over the phone, but eventually. She wanted my pain loud enough to be useful. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I decided not to give my pain to her. The lawyer was named Margaret Ellis. A man from my office recommended her after his own divorce. He told me she was direct, expensive, and worth it. Her office was small and plain, nothing like the dramatic legal offices you see on television. No glass walls, no shining city view, no assistant rushing in with files. Just a tidy room with shelves, a wooden desk, and a woman in her late 50s who looked at me like she had heard every kind of heartbreak and no longer had patience for decorative lies. I told her everything. She did not interrupt. She read the messages. Her face did not change much, but her eyes hardened. "You understand what this means?" she asked. She cheated. More than that, Margaret said. She is preparing a story. People don't always win with facts. Sometimes they win by making the other person behave badly in a room where someone is recording. I looked down at my hands. What do I do? You stay calm. That's it. That is the foundation. No shouting. No threats. No blocking doorways. No late-night emotional messages. No insults. No touching her, even to stop her from walking away. Assume every conversation is recorded and every message may be read by someone who doesn't love you. I almost laughed at that last part. She already doesn't love me. Margaret looked at me for a long moment. That may be true. But you need to stop making choices as if the woman you married is the only woman standing in front of you. That sentence stayed with me because it named the thing I had been unable to admit. I was still reacting to the Rachel I married, not the Rachel who had written those messages. The woman I married would never have planned to frame me as unstable. The woman I married would never have laughed with another man about how predictable I was. The woman I married would never have turned my love into a weakness. But the woman living in my house now had done all of that. Maybe they were the same person and I had only known one side. Maybe people change. Maybe comfort reveals character as much as hardship does. I didn't know. I only knew that I had to survive what came next without becoming the monster she needed me to be. For 2 weeks, I lived inside my own home like a witness. Rachel continued her routine. She left for meetings. She came home late. She guarded her phone. She tested me. I could feel it. Small remarks dropped like matches. Some men know how to make a woman feel chosen. I don't think you've really seen me in years. You're so calm it's almost cruel. Sometimes I wish you would just react like a human being. Each time I felt something flare in my chest and each time I let it burn without speaking. I answered carefully. I kept distance. I wrote down dates and times. I forwarded suspicious financial records to Margaret. I found hotel charges from accounts I had never checked closely because trust makes you lazy in places where you should still be wise. I found transfers from our savings into Rachel's business account, larger than usual, with explanations that no longer held together. I found a receipt for a bracelet I had never seen her wear around me. I found a restaurant charge on the night she told me she was comforting a friend. The hardest part was acting normal when normal had become a costume. Rachel would stand in the kitchen making coffee, and I would remember the messages. She would ask if we needed groceries and I would remember Ethan writing, "Soon he'll be out of the way." She would kiss my cheek before leaving and I would wonder whether guilt had any taste at all. Sometimes I almost broke. Once, she came downstairs wearing one of my old sweatshirts, her hair messy, no makeup, looking so much like the woman from our early years that I had to turn away. She asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "Just tired." She came closer, touched my arm and said softly, "You've been distant." I looked at her hand on my sleeve and thought, "You are touching the man you are trying to provoke." I gently moved away and said, "I have a lot on my mind." For a second, I saw annoyance behind her concern. She didn't want distance. She wanted reaction. The confession happened on a rainy evening in April. I came home from work to find the house warmer than usual, candles lit on the dining table, and the smell of roast chicken in the air. Rachel had cooked. That alone told me something was coming. She rarely cooked elaborate meals anymore unless she wanted to soften a conversation. She wore a black dress with sleeves that fell off one shoulder, elegant but too deliberate for a quiet dinner at home. Her hair was styled. Her makeup was careful. Her phone was on the bookshelf behind my chair, screen down, angled toward the table. I saw it before I sat down. I didn't look directly at it for too long. I placed my coat on the back of a chair, washed my hands, and sat across from my wife as if I were not about to watch her stage the final act of a performance she thought she controlled. We ate in silence for several minutes. The food tasted like paper. Rachel moved her fork around her plate without really eating. Finally, she placed the fork down and breathed in through her nose. "Daniel, we need to talk." I nodded. "Okay." She folded her hands on the table. "I've been unhappy for a long time." "I know." She looked irritated. "No, you don't. You think you do, but you don't." "Then tell me." She watched me carefully. "I have felt invisible in this marriage. I have felt alone. I have felt like you stopped seeing me as a woman and started seeing me as part of the furniture." I let the words settle. "I'm sorry you felt invisible." "You're sorry I felt invisible?" she repeated. "Yes." Her eyes narrowed. "That sounds like something someone says when they don't want to take responsibility." "I'll take responsibility for my failures," I said. "But not for things you chose not to tell me honestly." Her mouth tightened. She had expected defense, maybe anger. Not a boundary. She leaned back and crossed her arms. This is what I mean. You talk like a manager, not a husband. Everything is controlled with you. Even now. I'm trying to listen. No, you're trying to stay above it. Above what? Emotion. I looked at her phone without moving my head, then back at her. I don't think tonight is a good night for me to lose control. Something flickered in her eyes. She heard the sentence, but she didn't understand how much I knew. She looked down at her plate, then up at me again. Her voice became quieter, more dramatic. I cheated on you, Daniel. The words landed between us. She let them sit there, heavy and sharp, waiting for me to pick them up and cut myself open. I looked at her for a long moment. I thought of our first apartment above the bakery. I thought of her saying I made her feel safe. I thought of all the nights I had stayed up building her business, fixing her life, protecting her peace. Then I thought of the message: he might yell or grab my arm. That may be enough. I placed my napkin beside my plate and said, I know. She blinked. What? I know. What does that mean? Her voice had changed. The performance cracked. It means I know about Ethan. I know about the hotel. I know about the messages. I know about the money you moved. I know about the plan to provoke me. And I know your phone is recording us. Her face went pale. The candles flickered in the silence. She looked toward the bookshelf too quickly. Then she looked back at me. You're insane. No, I said. I'm informed. You went through my private things? I found enough to protect myself. That's disgusting. Planning to make your husband look dangerous because you cheated is disgusting. She stood up, and the chair scraped loudly against the floor. How dare you? I stayed seated. Careful. You're recording. Her eyes widened with anger and fear. Stop saying that. Why? Because it's manipulative. No, Rachel. Manipulation is setting a table, placing a phone behind me, confessing to an affair, and hoping I react badly enough to help your divorce. For a moment she looked at me like she hated me. Not because I was wrong, but because I had refused to be useful. Then her face changed again. Softer. Wounded. Daniel, she whispered. I almost looked away. That voice still had power. After everything, there was still a part of me trained to respond when she sounded hurt. That is one of the humiliations of love. Your heart keeps old habits even when your mind has new evidence. I stood slowly, making sure there was space between us, and walked to the sideboard. I took out the brown envelope Margaret had told me to prepare and placed it on the table. Rachel stared at it. What is that? Copies. Of what? Messages. Records. Dates. Enough. She laughed once, but it sounded thin. You already got a lawyer? Yes. When? After I learned you and Ethan were discussing how to make me look unstable. She sat down again, this time slowly. The anger was still there, but fear had entered the room and taken a chair beside her. I opened the envelope and removed a small stack of printed pages. I did not throw them at her. I did not spread them dramatically across the table. I placed them neatly between us. Rachel looked down. She saw Ethan's name. She saw her words. She saw the sentence about recording me. Her lips parted slightly. This is out of context. I almost smiled. Then explained the context. She didn't. She moved one page aside and saw the hotel charge. Then another message. Then a bank transfer. The color in her face shifted again. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself. You had no right. You lost the right to complain about privacy when you tried to weaponize my reaction. Tears filled her eyes then. I watched them rise. I remembered how many times those tears had ended conversations. I remembered apologizing just because she cried. I remembered holding her after she wounded me. Not tonight. She whispered, I made a mistake. No, I said. You made a choice. Then another. Then another. Then you made a plan. She wiped her face with shaking fingers. I was lonely. Maybe. You were never there. I was working. Often for us. Often for you. You don't get it. You provided, Daniel. You didn't love me the way I needed. Then you should have told me the truth before you betrayed me. I tried. No. You complained. You criticized. You compared. You punished. You did not sit down and say, I am close to breaking our marriage if we don't get help. She looked away. It's not that simple. It never is when someone wants to excuse themselves. Her eyes snapped back. You're being cruel. I'm being calm. You're not used to the difference. She flinched again. I hated that part of me felt satisfaction. I didn't want to become cruel. I didn't want to enjoy hurting her. But truth has a hard edge. and for once I was not going to wrap it in cloth before handing it to her. "What do you want?" she asked. Those were the words that told me she still did not understand what had happened. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "How much have I hurt you?" Not, "Can I do anything to repair the damage I caused?" Just negotiation. "What do you want?" I gathered the papers and put them back into the envelope. "A divorce." She shook her head immediately. "No, yes. You don't get to decide that alone. You decided many things alone. This is 14 years, Daniel. I know exactly how long it is. And you can just throw it away?" I looked at her, then really looked. She was beautiful. Even sitting there with fear in her eyes, she was beautiful. That made it worse. Pain does not erase beauty. Betrayal does not make the person you loved suddenly ugly. Sometimes you have to walk away from someone who still looks like home. "I didn't throw it away," I said. "You carried it outside piece by piece. I'm just refusing to pretend the house is still standing." She started crying harder. "Ethan means nothing." I nodded slowly. "That may be the saddest part." "What does that mean?" "It means you destroyed something real for something you now claim is meaningless." She covered her mouth. I saw the words hit her. For a second, something like shame appeared in her eyes. Then she reached for anger again because anger was easier. "You're not innocent." I didn't say I was. "You neglected me." "Maybe I did." She looked surprised. "You admit it?" "I admit I was tired. I admit I missed things. I admit I became too quiet. I admit I thought providing was enough sometimes. I admit I should have listened better when you were unhappy. But none of that made you cheat. None of that made you lie. None of that made you plan to frame me as unstable. My failures are mine. Your betrayal is yours." She stared at me, breathing unevenly. The rain tapped harder against the window. The candles had burned low. The house that had once felt warm now felt like a room rented for a negotiation. Then her phone buzzed on the bookshelf. Neither of us moved. It buzzed again. Rachel wiped her face and stood. "Don't," I said. She froze. "Don't what?" "Don't answer it while pretending this is still only between us." She looked at me with hate again, then walked to the phone. She picked it up. Her face changed as she read the screen. I didn't need to see the name. I knew. Ethan had terrible timing, or maybe perfect timing, depending on what truth needed. Rachel tried to lock the screen quickly, but another message appeared. I saw enough. "Did he lose it?" That was all. 3 words. Did he lose it? Rachel closed her eyes. The last piece of the performance collapsed. I stood, took my coat from the chair, and walked toward the hallway. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Guest room." "You're staying here?" "For tonight. Tomorrow I'll leave temporarily. Not because I'm abandoning the house. Because I'm not giving you an opportunity to invent anything." She looked wounded by that, as if suspicion were unfair after everything she had planned. "I would never lie about that." I looked back at her. Yesterday I might have wanted to believe that. Tonight I don't have to. I locked the guest room door. I had never locked a door against my wife before. The click sounded louder than it should have. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, shoes still on, and finally my hands began to shake. Not in front of her. Not where her phone could see. Alone. That was where the pain came for me. It rose from my stomach into my throat until I leaned forward and pressed my palms against my eyes. I did not sob loudly. I did not break furniture. I did not curse her name. I just sat there shaking while the rain continued outside and the woman I loved cried in the room across the hall. Part of me wanted to go to her. That was the sickest part. Even after seeing the messages, even after watching her plan fail, some old instinct in me still responded to the sound of her pain. I had to remind myself that not all crying is regret. Sometimes crying is panic. Sometimes it is grief for consequences, not grief for harm caused. I stayed in the guest room. At 2:13 in the morning my phone lit up. Rachel had texted me. "I never meant for this to happen." I stared at the sentence. It was almost impressive in its emptiness. What did she mean by this? The affair? The discovery? The failed recording? The divorce? Another message came. "Please don't destroy my life." I typed nothing. Then another. "Ethan doesn't matter." Then another. "Say something." I thought of writing a paragraph. I thought of telling her what she had done to me. I thought of asking whether she had ever loved me at all. Instead, I wrote, "All communication about the divorce should go through attorneys." I sent it and turned the phone face down. For the first time in months, I slept for 3 uninterrupted hours. In the morning, Rachel was sitting at the kitchen table wearing a robe, no makeup, her hair tied messily behind her head. She looked smaller somehow. Less polished. less dangerous. That was another trap, though not one she necessarily intended. When someone who hurt you looks fragile, your memory begins editing. It shows you the good years. It shows you the soft mornings. It shows you the person they were when they needed you. I poured coffee without speaking. Daniel, she said. I kept my eyes on the mug. I'm leaving for work after I pack a bag. Can we talk? Not alone. I'm your wife. I looked at her. That used to mean safety. She swallowed. I ended it with him. I almost laughed, but I didn't. When? Last night. After he asked if I lost it? She looked down. It was over before that emotionally. Don't insult me with phrases you learned from guilt. Her eyes filled again. What do you want me to say? The truth. But I don't think you know how to give that without shaping it first. She stood and followed me into the hallway. I stopped before she came too close. She noticed. Her face tightened. Are you afraid of me now? I'm cautious. That's worse. No. What's worse is knowing I need to be. She hugged herself. I know you hate me. I don't. How can you not? I looked at the stairs, at the framed photo from our 10th anniversary hanging on the wall. In the photo, Rachel was laughing against my shoulder, and I looked like a man who had no idea his life could become this. Because hate would be simpler, I said. And nothing about this is simple. She whispered, I still love you. I closed my eyes for a second. Maybe. But your love became too dangerous for me to live inside. She started crying again, quietly this time. I walked past her, went upstairs, packed a bag, and left our house with 3 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, my laptop, my passport, and the envelope. I stayed with my younger brother, Mark. He opened the door, took one look at me, and said, How bad? I said, Bad. He moved aside. Mark was 5 years younger, divorced, blunt, and loyal in a way that did not always come gently. His apartment was cluttered with tools, sports equipment, and half-finished repairs he insisted were projects. He made coffee so strong it tasted like punishment and listened while I told him everything. When I got to the part about the recording, he stood up and paced the kitchen. I'll go over there right now. No, Daniel, she tried to set you up. And if you go there angry, you help her prove the family is unstable. He swore under his breath and gripped the counter. I always liked Rachel. So did I. He looked at me then and his anger softened. Are you okay? I wanted to say yes because that is what older brothers say. Instead I said, I don't know. Mark nodded. Then don't be okay here. Be smart out there. But here you can fall apart. That kindness almost broke me more than Rachel's betrayal. The first week after I left was a blur of legal calls, work, sleepless nights, and messages I didn't answer. Rachel changed tactics every few hours. In the morning she was sorry. By lunch she was angry. In the afternoon she was practical. At night she was desperate. You're being cold. You're punishing me. You never fought for us. I was wrong. Please come home. My lawyer says you can't just abandon the property. I miss you. Do you even care? I forwarded everything to Margaret. She told me to respond only when necessary and only in neutral language. Neutral language feels unnatural when your life is on fire. You want to write, how could you? You want to write, do you understand what you did? You want to write, I loved you more than I loved my own peace. Instead, I wrote sentences like, I will continue contributing to agreed household expenses pending legal guidance. It felt ridiculous. It also saved me. Rachel called my mother on the 4th day. I knew she would. My mother loved Rachel. She had no daughters and had treated Rachel like one. When my mother called me, her voice was careful. Daniel, sweetheart, Rachel came by. I closed my eyes. What did she say? She said you two are having serious problems. Did she say why? My mother hesitated. She said she made a mistake. Did she say she cheated? Silence. Yes. Did she say she planned to record my reaction and use it against me? My mother made a small sound like the air had left her. What? I told her enough. Not all. A mother does not need every ugly detail to understand danger. When I finished, she was crying. I told her marriage is sacred, she whispered. I told her people can repair things if there is remorse. But I didn't know this. That's why I need you not to get involved. She looked so broken. She may be. But broken people can still break others. My mother cried harder. I just don't want you alone. I looked around Mark's messy kitchen, at the sink full of dishes and the small couch where I had barely slept. I was already alone, Mom. I just didn't know it. Friends began to hear versions of the story. That is how divorce spreads. Not as truth, but as edited fragments carried by people who want to feel helpful. One friend texted me, "Rachel says things got complicated. Hope you're both okay." Another wrote, "Not taking sides, but don't let lawyers turn this ugly." The phrase "not taking sides" usually means someone has already accepted a softer version of the betrayal. I stopped explaining after a while. People who wanted the truth could ask. People who wanted drama could feed themselves elsewhere. The strange thing was how many people cared more about the appearance of peace than the presence of justice. "Don't make it ugly," they said. But it was already ugly. I was only refusing to decorate it. Ethan called me once. Unknown number. I answered because Margaret had told me not to avoid possible evidence. "Daniel Carter?" a man asked. His voice was smooth, confident, practiced. "Speaking." "This is Ethan Cole." I said nothing. He cleared his throat. "I think we should talk." "About what?" "About making sure this doesn't become more painful than it needs to be." I almost admired the arrogance. "You were sleeping with my wife and advising her on how to provoke me. I think we passed painless a while ago." His voice cooled. "Rachel was unhappy long before me. Then you should have let her become divorced long before you. You don't know what your marriage looked like from her side. And you don't know what it looked like from the side paying the mortgage while she used hotel rooms with you." Silence. Then he said, "Be careful, Daniel." "Is that a threat?" "It's advice. Here's mine. Don't call me again unless your attorney is listening." I ended the call and immediately wrote down the time, then sent the summary to Margaret. My hands shook afterward, but only afterward. 2 weeks later, Rachel and I met with attorneys for the first time. The conference room was bright, cold, and smelled faintly of printer toner. Rachel arrived wearing a navy suit and carrying a folder. She looked composed until she saw me. Then her eyes softened in a way I knew too well. She wanted to reach the husband, not the man with legal counsel. I looked away first. Margaret sat beside me, calm as stone. Rachel's attorney was a man named Paul Hargrove, silver-haired and polite in the way people are polite when they are preparing to be unpleasant. The discussion began with property, accounts, temporary living arrangements, business assets, and financial disclosures. Rachel requested exclusive use of the house until the divorce was complete. Margaret objected. Rachel requested that I continue paying the mortgage and utilities because I was voluntarily staying elsewhere. Margaret explained that I had left temporarily due to concerns about false allegations and emotional safety. Paul raised an eyebrow. Margaret slid copies of selected messages across the table. Paul read them. His expression changed slightly. Rachel looked at the table. "That meeting taught me something. The truth does not always need to shout, but it does need to be organized. Pain without documents is easy for others to dismiss. Dates, records, messages, payments, screenshots, timelines, these became the language of survival." Rachel cried once during the meeting. She said, "I don't recognize him anymore." Margaret replied, "My client could say the same." I said nothing. Rachel looked at me, waiting, maybe hoping I would soften in front of everyone. I kept my hands folded. The meeting ended with temporary agreements and no dramatic closure. In the hallway, Rachel stopped me. "Daniel, please." I turned. "Not here." "Then where?" "You won't talk to me." "Correct. How can we fix anything if you won't talk?" I looked at her attorney standing a few feet away, pretending not to listen. "You didn't confess to fix anything. You confessed to provoke me. Don't rewrite that in the hallway." Her face crumpled. I walked away before the old instinct could drag me back. At night, loneliness became its own person. It sat beside me on Mark's couch. It followed me to work. It stood in the grocery store when I reached for Rachel's favorite cereal out of habit. It waited in my car when a song from our wedding playlist came on. During the day I was disciplined. At night I became human again. I missed her. I hated that I missed her. I missed the version of her that might never have existed fully, or might have existed and then disappeared. I missed the warmth of a body beside me. I missed saying we. I missed the ordinary messages. "Need anything from the store?" "Running late." "Dinner?" Betrayal doesn't only take trust. It takes language. It takes habits. It takes the future you assumed was waiting. You don't just lose a person. You lose the version of yourself who believed in that person. One Friday night I almost called her. I had been working late, and when I got into my car, I saw a voicemail from Rachel. I should have forwarded it to Margaret unheard. Instead I listened. Her voice was quiet, raw. "I know you don't believe me, but I am sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Not sorry the plan failed. Sorry I became this person. I don't know when it happened. I don't know how I let myself justify it. I keep walking through the house and seeing you everywhere. Your mug. Your shoes by the door that aren't there anymore. The chair you always sat in. I thought I wanted freedom, but I think I just wanted to feel important. Ethan made me feel important because he didn't know the boring parts of me. You knew all of me, and somehow I turned that into something worthless. I don't expect you to answer. I just needed to say it. The message ended. I sat in the parking lot with the phone in my hand and felt something inside me loosen painfully. That was the first message that sounded like regret instead of strategy. Or maybe I wanted it to. Wanting is dangerous when you are wounded. I did not call. I saved the voicemail. Then I drove to Mark's apartment and sat in the car outside for 20 minutes because I didn't want him to see my face. When I finally went in, he looked up from the couch and said, "You listened to something, didn't you?" I nodded. He muted the television. Was it good or bad? Both. That's the worst kind. I sat down. She sounded sorry. Mark leaned back. Maybe she is. I looked at him, surprised. He held up a hand. I'm not saying go back. I'm saying people can be sorry and still not be safe. That sentence helped me more than any angry speech could have. People can be sorry and still not be safe. I wrote it down later because I needed to remember it. Rachel's business began to suffer. Not publicly at first, but through the legal disclosures I saw enough. Payments delayed. Clients unsettled. Ethan's promised connections disappeared. The lake house project was suddenly paused. The showroom lease she had been considering became impossible without money she had assumed she could protect. Ethan retreated the moment consequences arrived. Men like Ethan enjoyed being chosen in secret. They did not enjoy being named in documents. Rachel sent one message about him 3 weeks after the confession. He's gone. You were right about him. I did not answer. There was no victory in it. I had not wanted to be right. Being right had cost too much. Then Ethan's wife contacted me. Her name was Laura. She emailed first, politely, almost formally. She said she had reason to believe our situations were connected and asked if I would be willing to speak. I showed Margaret. Margaret advised caution but said I could share limited factual information if I wished. I met Laura in a quiet cafe on a Tuesday afternoon. She was not what I expected. I had imagined someone cold and elegant, maybe because Ethan seemed like the kind of man who collected appearances. Laura looked tired, intelligent, and deeply embarrassed by pain she had not caused. She wore a gray coat and no wedding ring. "I'm sorry," she said before sitting. "So am I." She looked at me for a long moment. "Did you feel insane before you knew?" The question struck me harder than anything else she could have asked. I nodded. "Yes." She exhaled shakily. "Me too." I showed her only what connected Ethan directly. Messages. Dates. Nothing intimate, nothing cruel. She read silently. When she finished, she closed her eyes. He told me I was paranoid. Rachel told me I was insecure. Laura laughed once without humor. Same script. We sat there like survivors of the same storm from opposite sides of town. After meeting Laura, I expected to feel better. Instead, I felt heavier. The affair was no longer a private wound inside my house. It had spread into another marriage, another family, another set of memories. Laura told me they had 2 teenage daughters. I thought of them and felt sick. Betrayal is never as contained as cheaters pretend it is. They tell themselves it is private, that no one needs to know, that what happens in secret belongs only to the people in the secret. But secrets collect interest. By the time they come due, innocent people are paying. Rachel found out I had spoken to Laura and called me 12 times in one evening. I did not answer. Then she texted, "Why are you trying to ruin everyone?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I wrote, "I told the truth to someone who was being lied to." She replied, "You wanted revenge." I typed, "Revenge would require me to enjoy this." Then I deleted it. No response was safer. Later that night she sent another message, "I don't know who you are anymore." I whispered to the empty room, "Neither do I," and put the phone away. The divorce moved slowly. Legal processes do not care that your heart wants resolution. They ask for forms, statements, disclosures, appraisals, receipts, dates, signatures. Every document felt like another small burial. The house had to be valued. The accounts had to be divided. Rachel's business had to be examined because marital funds had supported it. She hated that most of all. She said I was trying to take away her independence. Margaret said we were tracing shared assets. Rachel said I was punishing her. Margaret said consequences often feel like punishment to the person facing them. I admired Margaret for saying things I was too tired to say. One afternoon, I went back to the house to collect more belongings. Rachel was not supposed to be there, but her car was in the driveway. I almost left. Then I remembered Margaret's instructions and turned on my phone recorder before entering. Rachel was sitting on the stairs holding one of our wedding albums. She looked up when I opened the door. "I forgot you were coming," she said. "It was scheduled." "I know. I forgot." I stood near the entryway. "I'll just get my things." She looked down at the album. "Do you ever look at these?" "No, I do." I said nothing. She turned a page. "We were happy." "Yes." "Was it real?" I felt the question in my chest. "For me, yes." She began crying. "For me too." I wanted to believe her. Maybe I did. That was the cruelty of it. The happiness had been real. The betrayal was real too. One truth did not erase the other. I went upstairs and packed books, winter clothes, old documents, a watch my father had left me. When I came back down, Rachel was standing in the hallway. She kept distance this time. "I'm going to therapy," she said. "Good. Not to get you back. I mean, I want that. But I know I can't ask. I'm going because I scared myself." I looked at her carefully. "That's good. Do you believe people can change?" she asked. I held the box tighter. "Yes." Hope flashed in her eyes. I continued, "But change doesn't undo damage on command." The hope dimmed. "I know." I moved toward the door. "Daniel?" I stopped. "I did love you." My throat tightened. I didn't turn around. "I hope that's true." Then I left. Months passed in pieces. I moved into a small apartment downtown. It was nothing like the house. One bedroom, narrow kitchen, view of a brick wall and a slice of sky. The first night there, I ate takeout from the container while sitting on the floor because my furniture hadn't arrived. I looked around and felt both pathetic and free. No hidden phone. No footsteps I was listening for. No one coming home smelling like another life. Just silence. At first, silence frightened me. Then slowly it became clean. I started therapy because I realized I was becoming suspicious of everyone. A female coworker complimented my presentation, and I wondered what she wanted. A friend canceled dinner and I assumed deception. My mother asked if I was sleeping and I nearly snapped at her. Pain was making me unfair, and I didn't want Rachel's betrayal to become the lens through which I saw all people. My therapist, Dr. Lane, was patient in a way that annoyed me at first. She asked simple questions that opened complicated doors. "What do you miss?" she asked once. I said, "My wife." Then I corrected myself. "The marriage I thought I had." She nodded. "Those are different losses." They were. I missed Rachel, but I also grieved my own innocence. I grieved the man who thought loyalty guaranteed loyalty in return. I grieved the years I could no longer remember without suspicion standing in the corner. At work, I became more focused than ever. That sounds healthy, but it wasn't at first. It was escape. Spreadsheets did not cheat. Schedules did not rewrite history. Problems at work had solutions if you found the right data. Human beings were messy. My boss noticed and told me to take time off. I said I was fine. He said, "People who are fine don't answer emails at midnight every night." I took 3 days. I spent the first day cleaning my apartment. The second day walking without destination. The third day sitting in a park watching families, couples, joggers, children with dogs, old men playing chess. Life had continued without asking permission from my pain. That felt insulting at first, then comforting. If life could continue around me, maybe eventually it could continue through me. Rachel and I signed the final settlement nearly 8 months after the confession. We sold the house. The business assets were handled in a way neither of us loved, which Margaret said usually meant the agreement was fair enough. Rachel kept her business but had to account for marital funds. I recovered some money. Not all. Money mattered, but not as much as I had expected. What mattered was leaving without being painted as the villain in a story she created to survive her own guilt. What mattered was that the final documents contained no accusation that I had been violent, threatening, or unstable. Her recording, the one she had intended to use, was never submitted. I sometimes wondered if she listened to it. I wondered if hearing my calm voice made her feel shame or anger. Maybe both. On the day we handed over the house keys, I arrived early. The rooms were empty. Without furniture, the house looked smaller. Sound echoed differently. I walked through each room slowly. In the kitchen, I saw the place where she had stood after coming home late, smelling like cologne. In the dining room, I saw the table where she confessed. In the living room, I saw movie nights, Christmas mornings, arguments, laughter, folded laundry, takeout containers, birthday candles, Rachel dancing badly to a song she loved while I pretended not to smile. Memory is cruel because it does not separate itself neatly. The good and the bad arrive together, holding hands. Rachel came in while I was standing near the kitchen window. She wore a beige coat and looked tired but calm. "Hi," she said. "Hi." We waited for the realtor in silence. After signing the last papers, the new owners arrived, a young couple with a baby. They were excited, nervous, hopeful. The woman asked if the neighborhood was quiet. Rachel answered warmly. I watched her smile at them and felt a strange ache. She was still capable of warmth. That had never been the question. The question was what she did when warmth was not enough to feed her ego. Outside, after everything was done, Rachel stopped beside her car. "Daniel." I turned. "I want to say something, and I don't expect anything from you." I waited. She took a breath. "You were a good husband." The words hit me harder than I expected. For years I had wanted her to see that. Now that she said it, it felt like flowers brought to a grave. "I tried to be," I said. "You were." Her eyes filled, but she did not cry dramatically. "I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough. That was my shame talking. Not the truth." I looked away because the sky suddenly seemed too bright. "Thank you for saying that." "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" she asked. I thought about lying to be kind. Then I chose truth. "I think I'll forgive you enough to be free. I don't know if I'll ever forgive you enough to remember us without pain." She nodded slowly. "That's fair." We stood there for a few seconds, two people who had once promised forever and were now struggling to say goodbye without breaking again. She said, "Take care of yourself." I said, "You too." Then we got into separate cars and drove in opposite directions. A year later, I saw Rachel again by accident. I was in a bookstore on a Saturday afternoon, looking for a gift for my nephew, when I turned into the biography section and there she was. She looked different. Her hair was shorter. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, no polished armor, no expensive performance. For a moment we just stared at each other. Then she smiled sadly. "Hi, Daniel." "Hi, Rachel." She asked about my mother. I asked about her business. She said it was smaller now but healthier. "I stopped chasing clients who made me feel important," she said. "Now I work with people who actually respect the work." I nodded. "That sounds better." She looked at the book in my hand. "Gift. Nephew. Mark's boy." "Yes." She smiled genuinely. "He must be big now." "He is." The conversation was ordinary and that made it strange. After all the pain, we were two people speaking softly between shelves of books, not enemies, not lovers, not strangers exactly, but something history has no clean word for. Before leaving, she said, "I'm still in therapy." "I'm glad." "I'm not saying that to prove anything. I just wanted you to know I kept going." "Good." She hesitated. "Are you happy?" The question surprised me. I thought about it. "Not always. But I'm peaceful more often than I used to be." Her eyes shone. "That matters." "Yes." She looked like she wanted to say more but didn't. Maybe that was growth. Maybe regret had finally taught her not every feeling deserved to become someone else's burden. She touched the edge of a bookshelf lightly and said, "I really am sorry, Daniel." I nodded. "I know." And this time those two words meant something different. Not accusation. Not exposure. Just acceptance of a truth that had arrived too late to save us but not too late to be real. I watched her walk away. My chest ached, but I did not want to follow. That was how I knew I had changed. Not because I no longer felt anything, but because feeling no longer commanded me. Love had become memory. Pain had become instruction. The life I thought had ended had made room for another one, quieter than I expected, but mine. People often ask what I would have done if Rachel had confessed honestly before I discovered the plan. I don't know. I used to torture myself with that question. Maybe I would have tried counseling. Maybe I would have stayed too long. Maybe I would have mistaken remorse for repair. Maybe we would have broken anyway. But the question stopped mattering because that was not the confession I received. The confession I received came with a hidden phone, a rehearsed accusation, and a man waiting somewhere for news that I had lost control. That truth mattered. Intent matters. Timing matters. The difference between someone who confesses because they cannot bear to lie and someone who confesses because the confession is part of a strategy is the difference between a wound and a weapon. I still believe in love. That surprises some people. Surprised me too. For a while, I thought betrayal had ruined that part of me. I thought I would become hard, suspicious, permanently guarded. Some days I was. But healing did not mean pretending nothing happened. It meant learning to trust myself before trusting anyone else. It meant understanding that calm is not weakness. It meant knowing that walking away can be an act of love toward the person you abandoned for too long, yourself. When Rachel said she cheated, she expected me to become the man her story needed. Angry, unstable, desperate, easy to blame. But my calm reply destroyed her plan because it did something more powerful than defend me. It revealed her. It showed both of us the truth we had been avoiding. She had counted on my love to make me predictable. She had counted on my pain to make me careless. She had counted on my history of forgiving her to make me forget myself. For a long time she was right. But not that night. That night, I learned that sometimes the strongest thing a betrayed person can do is not shout the truth but hold it steady. Not chase explanations from someone committed to lies. Not beg for respect from someone who has already spent it. Not perform pain for the person who caused it. Sometimes the strongest thing is to sit still, speak softly, and refuse to become evidence in someone else's false story. And sometimes the calmest sentence becomes the one that saves your life.